Hi, Rick. Thank you for joining me today just to demonstrate the capabilities of this video interview software that we use here at Kensington's. How are you?
Good morning, Ellie. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Excellent. You're all suited and booted. It looks like you're ready to get that job. So thank you for joining me. The first question I wanted to ask you, Rick, is if you could just bring me up to speed on your current situation.
Well, my current situation is that I own a consulting company and I help people in the additive manufacturing space, either people that want to adopt additive manufacturing to understand the technology or people that make additive manufacturing equipment. I help them with their marketing and social media.
Excellent. And how long have you been doing that for?
I've been doing that for 6 years.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. And obviously, you've got a wealth of experience in the industry. I appreciate this is a demonstration video, so I know that you're not actively looking for something new. But just to demonstrate our process, what's your kind of next step, would you say, in your career?
Well, sometime maybe in the next year, I might be looking for an unpaid internship in the retirement space.
Okay, excellent. And this may be able to help you with that, maybe. Who knows? Can you just, you briefly kind of touched on it there, but can you just talk me through your current role at the minute as a consultant, just in a little bit more detail? What does a day-to-day look like?
So I do spend a lot of time as a social media influencer because I have a large number of contacts on social media. So I'm able to boost customers' engagement by simply commenting or sharing their posts. Some people, maybe their business is not initially in the additive manufacturing space. So they've got a new product that they want to introduce and they come up with some great content. They put it out on something like LinkedIn and it gets very little engagement because their traditional customers aren't additive manufacturing customers. If I make a small comment to it, all of a sudden their engagement goes up, maybe by a factor of 10 for a fairly simple amount of work on my part.
Great, excellent. I'm sure they're very appreciative of that. So, moving on to kind of competency-based questions. So, this is something that we often do in our process here at Kensington's to ensure that we're truly assessing someone's capabilities and able to match them to the job that we are representing them for. So, first competency question I'd like to ask you is, can you tell me about a time where you have developed a strategy specifically in the additive manufacturing market?
Well, there are kind of two different ways to look at that. One is part of what I do as a consultant is help people understand and adopt the technology. So I was working for an aerospace company that had a core to their product that was 3D printed, and they needed to figure out how to make their product. So what we did is we started out with discussing the technology and what's the right way to do it. And they hired a young engineer who was really knowledgeable in the additive manufacturing space to basically run their additive manufacturing department. And then through initial prototyping, we worked with a service bureau. Now, it was actually a manufacturer that was making parts on their equipment as part of their service bureau to understand how to make their initial parts, and then guided them through acquiring a machine and making parts on their own. And just this past week, they got $60 million of funding. So I'd say they're doing okay.
Okay, so it's definitely instrumental to the success of that then.
Yes.
Excellent. Um, and there's often challenges in the industry. So what challenges have you been faced with when working in additive manufacturing, and how would you say you dealt with that specifically?
Well, the interesting challenges in additive manufacturing are that a lot of your potential customers don't really understand additive manufacturing. And, if you're with a company that's selling equipment, you get a lot of inquiries. And part of dealing with those inquiries is being honest with your customer about what you can and can't do. Sometimes with a new technology, a new material, you get your inquiries and they fall into different categories. And one category is like, wow, that looks like that's really perfect for this application. And what's
Mm.
disappointing is that may only be about 5% of the applications. They may have another 10% that are like, okay, this is a pretty good application, but I'm not sure if we can do it. And then you need to come clean with the customer and say, hey, this is what we're looking at. Let's explore this together. Can we share some of the risk? Will you at least cover the material we'll go through? We'll cover the engineering, do something like that so that you can get through and figure out if it is an application. And then the rest of them, the other 85%, you got to look at the customer and say, I really don't think that's going to work. And I'm really sorry. Maybe here's a technology that might work. How about you go in this direction? Or that's just not a good application for additive manufacturing. And for somebody who's really excited and wants to sell a product, that's like the hardest thing to do, is just say, I'm really sorry, but I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah. Honesty is policy there, isn't it? And I think a lot of it's managing expectations, and being upfront with people, which I'm sure they'll appreciate. Historically, I know, we might be going back a few years, to when you were leading teams, but we always like to ask leadership specific questions when dealing with senior positions. So, one thing is about motivating teams and leading teams. Can you maybe give me an example of a time where you've tried to get the best out of a team that you were leading, and what the results were?
It's funny, the first team I had to lead was an applications team in laser cutting for a machine tool company. And the laser product manager, who was my boss, abruptly left, and I was all of a sudden in charge of the applications department. And we had about 7 guys who dealt with demonstrations of machines and then would go out and do what we call advanced applications training in the field. So once someone learned how to cut something on a laser, they then would run the machine for a few months, and sort of like learning how to drive a car. You need to drive it for a little bit before you can take race car driving lessons. We would then send out the application specialists to teach them how to get the most out of the team. And the way we'd done it in the past is the product manager would come in on Monday morning and we would have a meeting, and he'd have a stack of papers and he'd go, okay, you're going to go to Minnesota today and you're going to do this demo for a customer today. And he'd assign everything. And so micromanage the whole process. And I looked at that and said, this is just not really going to work very well. I don't need to spend all my time managing these guys. And sales guys have territories. So I said, okay, you guys are all going to have a territory. You're going to get assigned a group of salespeople, some geography. And whenever we have a demo from that area, you get to do the demo. The salesman can arrange it with you. Me as the product specialist, I'll come in and do the presentations. You do the running of the machine. And then once we sell the machine to that customer, you're the one who gets to go out in the field and do the training. And so all of a sudden, the Monday morning meeting was, just tell me where you guys are going and what you're doing this week. And they all, appreciated that I respected them. I treated them as knowledge workers, something that I learned from a professor at University of Chicago. Gave a great keynote at a conference I went to about how she had explored all these different really successful companies to find out what they had in common. And they all treated their employees as knowledge workers. Everybody all the way down to the floor and all the way up. And that's a lean manufacturing kind of thing that we think about today, is you want the person who's actually doing it has the expertise. So you want to rely on them. And so anytime you've got a team, if you can manage them as knowledge workers and give them the respect and knowledge to run things themselves, that really works out well, I think.
Nice. Yeah, and you mentioned kind of giving respect in that sense. How would you say that they probably perceived you as a manager, do you think?
Well, it's funny because sometimes you got to earn respect, and back then these guys there's hardly anybody who knew how to cut things on a laser. Sort of like, today it's like not everybody knows how to run an additive manufacturing machine. And one of the guys who was kind of the most interesting to manage, he was out cutting some parts for the shop, some shims, and he got called away on a call. And when he came back down, I was going to continue my discussion with him, but I also took the material off and put the next one on and was cutting some new shims. And he's like, oh, this guy knows how to run the machine too. It's like, I can't get anything over on him. So yeah, after that, we had a great working relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, definitely from our experience, when managers are hands-on as well, kind of in the nitty-gritty of it, but also, managing a team, it's a good combination. So yeah, that's great. So can you give me an example? We talk about change management a lot, of where you have led a particular change in a business and how that worked?
I worked for a machine tool company, and we were evolving how we were selling. And we had regional sales offices around the United States. There were 6 of them. And as we developed into, okay, now everybody had a laptop computer and could do their own communications, email was coming along. We didn't do everything by paper anymore. We said, okay, let's take a lean manufacturing approach to this and look at it. And so one of the other product managers and I got together with some of the secretaries that worked in our office, and we came up with a plan. And the company was really closing all the field sales offices except for the one at headquarters. And so we were taking a job that was done by 7 people and taking it down to a job being done by 2 people. And so it's like, okay, we took the marketing secretary and the field secretary that worked in our office, we put them next to each other so they could talk to each other. We rearranged the whole office so they could see which salespeople and marketing people were in and which people were out. And then we looked at every process and we're like, why do we need this file cabinet? It's like, we got rid of 20 file cabinets full of stuff. And just, it's like, hey, we're not going to file that anymore. We don't need it. It's electronic now. It's like, let's migrate how we're doing things. And it turned out that since the secretaries were in on the planning of it, that they really bought into the whole process. And the field sales guys realized that, hey, these ladies could turn out their quotes just as quickly and easily, and we'd email the quotes out to the field. All they had to do is print them out on their color printer at home, and they had a professional looking quote. So we were able to go through a real change in the number of people we had doing the job, and probably were doing the job better than we were doing it before.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, when you talk about policy and procedure, it's like what you were saying earlier as well, isn't it? It's almost kind of likening those policies and procedures to a production floor with, your Six Sigma, your Kaizen, your root cause analysis. And, that's something that even here, that's the methodology that we use in our recruitment, in our process of really refining and making, it's that on time, in full, reducing downtime, all that kind of stuff. And that's, the way we look at our business, and it has, a huge positive outcome when you really refine things in that sense. So, yeah, I get that. Can you tell me
Yeah,
how, obviously you're
it
sorry,
was
go
a
on.
Kaizen event in the office is what it really was.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you're very well connected, obviously. You're an industry influencer. How would you say you build and nurture relationships? What's the key to that?
Um, yeah, it's really interesting. There was a speaker that I saw a number of years ago, and I'm trying to come up with his name. His name's Jake Wood, and he is the founder of Team Rubicon. And what they are, they're a bunch of veterans who go into really intense disaster situations to help in disaster recovery. And,
Mm,
it gets them kind of the excitement that they were used to when they were in combat. And he talked about his time as a leader in the Marines. And what it boiled down to is, how do you lead these young men to go in and just risk their lives for their country or whatever? And you can't just tell them to go do that. And he talked about, when you're in a Marine on a march, you stop every few hours and you check everybody's feet, because if their feet aren't good, they can't march, they can't move.
mm,
And if you can't move as a Marine, and so caring for the people that worked that reported to him's feet was the most basic thing. But as it turns out, to be a leader, he was showing them love. And you think,
mm,
like, Marines love this, just doesn't. And then I kind of thought back to a early definition of love that I had read in the book The Road Less Traveled by psychiatrist M. Scott Peck. And to paraphrase it, it's like, every action that you have towards another person is to help them grow as an individual, grow
mm.
emotionally, grow and how they do things. And if you treat everybody in your life that way, you find that it's like you can really develop nice, good friendships, working relationships. So I think that's important.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of that sense of what you give out, you usually, you get it in return. There's no expectation, but it's usually kind of matched that way, isn't it? So that's great. So what would you say is your proudest moment or achievement in your career so far?
Yeah, I got a picture of it behind me. It's a 3D printed car called Strati. And it wasn't totally my achievement, it was a team achievement, but being part of the
Mhm.
team was one of the coolest things I've ever done. We had a
Excellent.
new 3D printer that we developed in conjunction with Oak Ridge National Labs, Cincinnati Incorporated, developed the BAM system. And we really started in February of 2014. We signed a cooperative research and development agreement with Oak Ridge. And about the same time, there was a car company, Local Motors, that had been discussing with IMTS actually making a car during IMTS, big trade show. And
Mm.
so they said, how about we 3D print a car? And we're like, nobody's ever done that. We're still developing the machine, but yeah, we're willing to try. I mean, Cincinnati Incorporated said they jump in. Oak Ridge said we're in. Some material companies, Sabic and Techmer, said we're in. We got a machining company to help out. And it all came together. So from signing a cooperative research and development agreement in February, we shipped a motion system to Oak Ridge in March. They put an extruder on it and we're printing parts by May. A Local Motors came up with a design concept for what the car would look like the first week in June. And then we had to engineer the whole 3D printing of the car, figure out how to print it. Nobody had ever printed anything this big before. Had a number of failures that were crazy. It just all delaminated the first time we tried to do it. But by the about the first week in September, it all came together at McCormick Place on the show floor. We 3D printed a car, machined it, added a drivetrain to it from a Renault Twizy, and drove it out of the trade show. And we had publicity that was unbelievable.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine.
it was so much fun. But that was in 2014, a
Yeah,
while
yeah.
ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's just when we were starting out. So that's yeah, that's amazing. Excellent. So I think one of the questions I asked you earlier in terms of your next step. So just tell me a little bit more about you. What do you get up to outside of the 9 to 5? Tell me more about Rick Neff.
I live in an older house, and in the United States, 1890s an old house here in Ohio.
Mm.
It might not be an old house in Europe somewhere. Old houses there are
Mm.
hundreds and hundreds of years old. I did
Yeah.
own a house that was built in 1742 when I lived in
Wow.
Boston, so that's a little bit older than this. But I like maintaining my old house and my yard and gardens and doing things like that. I play golf. I play pickleball. Photography is a sport, is a hobby that I've had for a while, and it was great when I was bringing up three boys. I took a lot of sports pictures, and their teams all loved having semi-professional pictures taken of them.
You can imagine.
Um, at soccer and now ultimate frisbee. My youngest at the University of Cincinnati plays ultimate frisbee, which is kind of fun. And I also have done a lot of images from my photography hobby as far as like what I've done with work. So we went
Mm.
from hiring photographers to using my digital camera and taking pictures. And I create a lot of the catalog pictures and things that we used at Cincinnati for years, and have done a lot of imaging for social media and things for my customers today. So that's kind of fun.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, it's nice when the two kind of mix and blend, isn't it? In your personal into your professional. And yeah, it sounds like you're keeping busy anyway. So great. Excellent. Well, that concludes today's interview. Thank you so much for taking the time, Rick. Really appreciate it. Like I say, this is a way for us to demonstrate this platform and what candidates can expect when they go through a process with Kensington Additive, and the same for clients. So yeah, really appreciate that you could take the time to support us with that.
Ellie, thank you so much. This has actually been a hoot. It's been fun. And
Great.
I love working with Kensington. Your people are also professional that it's been a lot of fun getting to know everybody and seeing how you do things. So thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. Thank you again, Rick. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.